Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Pound. We are studying Chapter 20 on Human Anatomy and Physiology. And today we're going to take another look at the skeletal system, but this is part 2. So in the last video, we learned about the different bones. And today our objectives will be to list the major types of joints in the human body, describe the anatomy of a typical joint. So let's take a look at joints. There are different types of joints in the body. The first type I want to talk about is the ball and socket. This is your shoulder and hip joint. You can see here in this x-ray that here is the ball at the top of the femur and the socket is in the pelvis. This is round and circular. It gives a wide range of motion so that you can just move your arm and your legs in a lot of directions. There's also the hinge joint between the humerus and the radius and also the knee. And as we can see here, it can be open, it can be closed. Okay, so the hinge joint, just like a door, just goes back and forth like the hinge on a door. Pivot, the neck, back and forth a little bit this way. Not quite as much as the range of motion as the shoulder or the hip, but still allows you to really move your head many different directions, like pivoting in basketball when you're going around in circles. Gliding between the carpals and the tarsals. Not a more subtle movement, not a complete hinge or anything, but they do glide past each other. And the carpals, remember, are the wrist bones and the tarsals are the ankle bones. You also have immovable joints, like in the skull here. We can see those immovable joints where these lines are in the drawings. And those lines are called sutures. These are places where two bones have fused together, forming a line. Just like think sutures that a doctor uses to close a wound. They fuse the skin together so that it can heal. And so that's the idea here of the suture. There's also the fontanelle. Now, we usually call this the soft spot. This is the place between skull bones of an infant. Right here, we can see that fontanelle. And this is so that the skull can compress so the baby can make it through the birth canal without it getting stuck. That's why some babies look kind of like when they're born, like they have little cone heads because those bones have to decompress and spread out again. Now, some important structures in associated with joints are tendons. This is connective tissue that attaches a muscle to a bone. And I like to remember that tendons tie muscles to bones. That's how I remember. And so these are the tendons, these white things here that are attaching. They're attached to the red muscles. You can see that here, and they are attaching to the bone. An interesting thing here is you can see not much muscle here. There's no muscle in the toes. The muscles are back here and they're attached to the toes with tendons that actually move the toes. Also, ligaments. These are tough strands of connective tissue that hold the bones of ball and socket and hinge joints together. I like to say that ligaments link bones to help me remember. And you can see these white structures back here holding different bones together, linking them together. Another thing that is associated with joints is called synovial fluid. Notice I underlined all of the S's to help you remember. So underline all of those S's. Synovial fluid is a secretion that lubricates a joint and acts as a shock absorber. So just like we lubricate moving parts in a car with oil, God has provided a lubricant in between your joints, in between the bones, those moving parts, so that they slide past each other more easily without getting caught. So let's also talk about some bone and joint diseases and disorders. Now, there are many more that um, occur in the body, but these are the ones I want you to know. First of all, a sprain. Who hasn't had a sprain? This is an injury to ligaments and tendons. On the surface, you can see the bruising. Underneath, those ligaments and tendons have been torn or overstretched, and they need to heal, and that takes time to heal. So, there would also be probably a lot of swelling from that sprain as well. And arthritis is something common. We can see here this is severe arthritis that has actually deformed some of the bones and joints. And arthritis is inflammation of a joint that occurs with age, tends to, and certain diseases, and is very painful. It makes it so the joints don't work as well. So our objectives for today's video were to list the major types of joints in the human body and describe the anatomy of a typical joint. Don't forget your 5 questions in the margins of your notes, and I will be back with the final video for this chapter.